All right, so get ready because today we're going to dive deep into something called anti-fragility.
Ooh, antifragility.
Have you ever heard of this?
I have.
It's this idea that we can learn to not just survive chaos, but actually benefit from it.
Benefit.
Isn't that kind of wild?
Yeah.
So we're going to be looking at this idea based on Nassim Taleb's book, Antifragile,
Okay.
and we're going to be pulling some excerpts directly from the book
All right.
and kind of understanding how can we identify things that actually get stronger amidst a little bit of productive disorder.
Yeah, it's fascinating how this whole idea of antifragility really flips the script
Right.
on how we usually think about uncertainty and volatility and all that.
Yeah.
It's not just about weathering the storm.
Yeah.
It's about understanding how some things actually use those elements to level up and thrive.
Yes, exactly. And so to kind of kick things off, I think it's helpful to understand Taleb's central framework, which he calls the triad.
Okay.
So he breaks everything down into three different categories:
Right.
the fragile, the robust,
Uh-huh.
and the anti-fragile.
All right. So for our listeners who haven't encountered this before,
Right?
think of a porcelain cup.
Okay.
You drop it, it shatters.
Fragile.
Fragile, exactly.
Okay.
Now, a stone,
Okay.
it can take a few hits.
Yeah.
But it stays essentially the same.
Robust.
Robust.
Got it.
But the real magic is in the anti-fragile.
Okay.
So picture the mythical Hydra.
Okay.
You cut off one head, two more grow back.
Yeah.
That's what we're aiming for here.
So less breakable, more mythical beast.
Exactly.
Yeah.
The porcelain cup breaks under stress.
Yeah.
The stone kind of withstands it,
Uh-huh.
but the Hydra actually gets stronger because of the stress.
That's what we want.
That's the goal.
So how do we make that happen?
Yeah, so for you, the goal is to figure out how to move away from that porcelain cup fragility
Okay.
and kind of embrace those strategies that make you more like that Hydra, benefiting from those bumps in the road.
So less breakable.
Yeah.
More mythical beast. Okay.
Yeah.
But how does this play out in the real world?
Right.
Give us some examples of this unexpected anti-fragility.
Well, one fascinating example is the Swiss political system.
Okay.
So unlike a centralized nation state,
Uh-huh.
Switzerland, with its decentralized cantons or states,
Okay.
is incredibly resilient.
Okay.
So think of it like a fleet of small boats instead of one massive ship.
Okay.
If one boat capsizes,
Yeah.
the others are unaffected and the fleet survives.
Interesting.
Each canton in Switzerland can experiment with different policies.
Right.
And then the successful ones are adopted by others.
Okay.
And if one falters, it doesn't bring down the entire system.
So you're saying that even in our own lives, diversifying our efforts and not relying on one big project
Yes.
could make us more anti-fragile,
Exactly.
not putting all our eggs in one basket, so to speak.
Exactly.
Yeah, right.
Another really powerful illustration of this concept is evolution itself.
Okay.
So the gene pool actually thrives on randomness and stressors. Individual organisms might be fragile,
Right.
but the species as a whole benefits from the variation and the adaptation,
Okay.
constantly being kind of refined and strengthened by those challenges.
So it's like constantly running experiments.
Yes,
And the ones that work,
stick around.
they stick around.
It's why we see such incredible diversity and resilience in the natural world.
I never thought of evolution that way.
Yeah,
That's really interesting.
and this concept applies to our own personal growth.
Okay. How's it?
Think about the process of learning from mistakes.
Okay.
Each setback, each time we stumble,
Yeah.
it provides valuable information and helps us refine our approach.
Okay.
We course correct and adapt.
Uh-huh.
It's how we become more resilient and adaptable over time.
So it's like that saying, what doesn't kill you makes you stronger.
Exactly.
But Taleb gives us a framework for understanding why that's true
Yeah.
and how to actively seek out those strengthening experiences.
Yes. And this leads us to another crucial point,
Okay.
the problem of intervention.
The problem of intervention.
Yeah, so Taleb uses this term iatrogenics to describe harm caused by intervention,
Okay.
often with good intentions.
So sometimes trying to fix things,
Yes.
to smooth out every bump in the road, can
Yeah.
actually make things more fragile.
Much more fragile.
Okay.
It disrupts those natural rhythms
Uh-huh.
and prevents systems from adapting and growing stronger on their own.
So you're saying that someone like Alan Greenspan trying to prevent all economic downturns
Yeah.
actually made things worse?
Well, Taleb would certainly argue that Greenspan's attempts to smooth out the economic cycle
Right.
ultimately led to more fragility in the financial system
Okay.
by suppressing that volatility in the short term.
Yeah.
He inadvertently created the conditions for a larger, more devastating crisis down the road.
So it's kind of like trying to hold a beach ball underwater.
Yes.
You might succeed for a little while, but eventually it's going to burst back up with
Exactly.
even more force.
With much more force.
Okay, that's a powerful image. So it's not about never intervening,
Right.
but understanding when intervention is truly necessary
Yes.
and when it might actually do more harm than good.
Exactly.
We have to recognize that some level of disruption is natural,
Yes.
even healthy for systems to actually thrive.
Precisely.
Okay.
And this idea ties into another one of Taleb's core concepts.
Right.
Skin in the game.
Skin in the game.
Yeah, he argues that those who make decisions
Yeah.
should have skin in the game,
Okay.
meaning they should bear the consequences of their actions.
So it's about accountability.
Yes.
Making sure that the people calling the shots are also the ones that feel the pain if things go wrong.
Exactly.
That they're not just playing with other people's lives or livelihoods.
Exactly. This connects directly to your world.
Okay.
When you think about the dangers of talkers, academics, pundits,
Yeah.
and the like who make pronouncements and predictions without any real accountability,
Right.
they can be wrong, even recklessly so, and face no real consequences for the damage that their words might cause.
It's easy to preach from a safe distance.
Right.
What about in the corporate world? Where you have corporate managers taking risks with other people's money while reaping the rewards for themselves.
That's a prime example of the dangers of misaligned incentives.
Okay.
When decision makers are insulated from the downside,
Yeah.
they're much more likely to take reckless risks,
Right.
knowing they won't personally bear the brunt of the fallout if things go south.
This skin in the game idea is a powerful one.
It is.
It really makes you think about the motivations and accountability of those in positions of power,
It certainly does.
doesn't it?
And it highlights the importance of aligning incentives
Right.
to promote responsible decision-making
Yeah.
and encourage a focus on long-term resilience
Yes.
rather than short-term gains.
All right, so we've covered the triad,
Yes.
real-world anti-fragility,
Uh-huh.
the problem of intervention,
Yeah.
and skin in the game. It's a lot to digest, but it's already shifting my perspective on how I view risk and success.
It's a powerful framework
Yeah.
for understanding the dynamics of a complex world,
For sure.
and we're just getting started.
Ah, boy.
Next, we'll explore this concept of optionality,
Okay.
having more upside than downside from events,
Right.
and how it connects directly to anti-fragility.
Okay.
It's a game changer for sure.
Buckle up, everybody.
Yes.
Okay, so let's pick up where we left off with this idea of optionality.
Yes.
I mean, it sounds like one of those fancy business school terms.
It does.
But what I'm gathering, it's actually a pretty simple and powerful idea.
It is.
So break it down for me.
Optionality at its core is about positioning yourself to benefit from the unexpected,
Okay.
even if you can't predict what that unexpected event might be.
Right.
So it's about having more upside than downside when things get shaken up.
Okay. I like the sound of that, maximizing the upside, minimizing the downside.
Exactly.
But how do we actually cultivate this optionality in our lives?
Yeah. Give us some real-world examples to illustrate how this works.
Okay, so think back to ancient Greece,
Okay.
to this guy named Thales of Miletus.
Thales of Miletus.
He saw an opportunity with olive presses.
Olive presses.
Now, he didn't try to predict the harvest,
Okay.
which is inherently unpredictable.
Right.
Instead, he secured the option to use the olive presses.
Oh.
So if the harvest was good,
Yeah.
he profited.
Okay.
If it wasn't, no big deal.
Right.
He didn't lose his shirt because he didn't own the presses outright.
Interesting.
He was anti-fragile to the uncertainty of the harvest.
So it's not about having a crystal ball and predicting the future. It's about creating a situation where you win no matter what happens,
Yeah.
or at least minimize your losses if things go south.
Precisely.
I like that.
And this connects to the power of tinkering and experimentation over rigid planning.
Okay.
By trying new things and exploring different approaches,
Uh-huh.
you naturally create more options for yourself.
You diversify your skill set, you expand your network,
Right.
and you become more adaptable to whatever the world throws your way.
So instead of getting locked into one path,
Right.
we should be embracing the unknown, constantly learning,
Right.
and creating a system that allows us to adjust course as needed.
Exactly.
Yeah, I'm starting to see how this connects to anti-fragility.
Yeah.
The more options you have,
Right.
the more resilient you become to unexpected changes.
Exactly.
Okay, so how about we add another layer to this,
Oh,
and
sure.
we can delve into Taleb's concept of via negativa.
Via negativa.
Okay, lay it on me. It sounds intriguing.
It's a powerful principle
Okay.
that can really kind of revolutionize the way you approach decision making.
Okay.
It's all about subtraction.
Subtraction.
Instead of constantly focusing on what to add to improve things.
Like more features.
More features, more information, more commitments.
Yeah.
You shift your focus to what you can remove to reduce harm or fragility.
Okay.
So it's a recognition that sometimes less is more.
So instead of always trying to build up and add more,
Yeah.
we should consider what we can strip away to make ourselves less susceptible to harm.
Exactly.
It's like creating a leaner, more efficient machine.
Yes.
Less baggage, less to go wrong.
Exactly. Think about how this applies to something like your diet.
Okay.
Processed foods, excessive sugar, artificial ingredients.
Yeah.
Those are all things you can subtract to improve your health.
So via negativa in the kitchen means focusing on whole, unprocessed foods.
Yes.
Cutting back on the sugar, ditching the junk.
Exactly.
Sounds pretty straightforward and honestly a lot less overwhelming than trying to follow the latest fad diet.
Exactly.
So this principle applies to so many areas of life.
Many areas.
Think about your relationships.
Yes.
Toxic people.
Yeah.
Unnecessary drama.
Yeah.
Energy-draining commitments.
All things you can subtract to create a more positive and supportive environment.
So it's about setting boundaries.
Yes.
Prioritizing quality over quantity. And letting go of relationships that no longer serve us.
Exactly. It's a bit like decluttering, but for your social life.
Yeah, I like that.
And even when it comes to something like information overload,
Oh, yeah.
we're constantly bombarded with news, social media updates, notifications.
Right.
Via negativa can be a lifesaver.
Okay.
So by consciously subtracting some of that noise, we can reduce stress, improve our focus, and create space for more meaningful experiences.
So it's about being intentional with our information consumption.
Yes.
Limiting our exposure to negativity.
Uh-huh.
Focusing on sources that truly enrich our lives.
Precisely.
Okay.
Now let's shift gears a bit.
Okay.
And explore another fascinating distinction that Taleb makes.
All right.
The difference between the sucker and the non-sucker.
Okay.
It might sound a bit harsh,
All right.
but it's a powerful way to think about risk and decision-making.
Okay. Color me intrigued. Break down this sucker versus non-sucker thing for me.
So the sucker, as Taleb describes them,
Yeah.
is easily fooled by appearances, follows the crowd,
Okay.
and takes risks without truly understanding the potential consequences.
So they're the ones falling for get-rich-quick schemes.
Yeah.
Following trends blindly. Buying into the latest fads without doing their due diligence.
Exactly.
Okay.
They're reacting emotionally instead of thinking critically.
Got it.
The non-sucker, on the other hand, is skeptical, thinks for themselves,
Uh-huh.
and understands that there are no guaranteed outcomes in life.
Right.
They're careful, deliberate,
Okay.
and always looking for ways to protect themselves from the downside, even when things look promising on the surface.
So they're the ones who question assumptions, do their research, and assess risks before jumping into anything new.
Precisely.
Okay.
They're not afraid to go against the grain and think independently.
So this distinction between the sucker and the non-sucker seems to connect directly to this idea of anti-fragility.
It does.
The non-sucker by nature is more cautious, more adaptable, more likely to bounce back from setbacks.
Absolutely. The non-sucker, by being skeptical and thinking critically, is inherently more anti-fragile.
Okay.
They're less likely to be caught off guard by unexpected events, more adaptable to change, and more likely to learn from their mistakes and course correct.
So to become more anti-fragile, we need to cultivate that non-sucker mindset.
Yes.
Be skeptical, think independently, and always consider the potential downsides even when everyone else seems to be jumping on the bandwagon.
Exactly. It's about developing a healthy dose of paranoia.
Paranoia.
Not in the debilitating sense,
Okay.
but in a way that makes you more aware of potential risks
Yeah.
and more prepared to deal with them.
So thinking defensively, strategically, and always having an exit strategy.
Exactly.
Okay, so we've got this via negativa principle for simplifying and subtracting, and the non-sucker mindset for navigating risk.
Yeah.
But how do these concepts play out in like the professional world?
That's a great question. Taleb is particularly critical of professions where people are rewarded for talking rather than doing,
Okay.
where success is measured by appearances, reputation, or the ability to spin narratives
Yeah.
instead of tangible results.
So he's talking about professions where it's more about style than substance.
Yeah.
Where people can get away with making bold claims and pronouncements without having to back them up with real-world results.
Exactly. He points to certain academics, economists, and even some journalists as examples.
Okay.
These are fields where people can build entire careers
Yeah.
on speculation, predictions, and complex theories that may have little basis in reality.
And because these talkers are often insulated from the consequences of their pronouncements,
Right.
they can make bold claims,
Yes.
offer grand solutions,
Yeah.
and even advocate for policies that might have devastating real-world consequences,
Right.
all without having to personally bear the burden if things go wrong.
Exactly. It's a case of misaligned incentives, just like we discussed earlier.
Yeah, it's coming back full circle.
Yep. It is.
And this is where skin in the game becomes so crucial.
It does.
Taleb argues that those who make decisions, especially those that affect others,
Yes.
should have something to lose if things go wrong.
They should.
It incentivizes them to be more prudent, more thoughtful,
Mm-hmm.
and to prioritize long-term sustainability over short-term gains or fleeting notoriety. It's about aligning incentives with outcomes,
Yes.
ensuring that those who benefit from success
Right.
also share in the consequences of failure.
Exactly.
It makes you wonder, in what professions do people have the most skin in the game?
Yeah.
Where are the stakes the highest?
Well, entrepreneurs and business owners who put their own capital at risk
Yeah,
often have a significant amount of skin in the game.
right.
Their livelihoods, their reputations, their entire fortunes are often tied to the success or failure of their ventures.
They're not just playing with theories.
No.
They're dealing with real-world consequences.
Exactly.
Their actions have tangible consequences. Mistakes aren't just theoretical abstractions.
Yeah,
They have a direct impact on their bottom line.
exactly. And this connects to another important point that Taleb makes.
Okay.
The value of real-world experience over abstract knowledge.
Okay.
He's very skeptical of what he calls Soviet Harvard delusions.
Soviet Harvard delusion.
This belief that complex systems like the economy or society
Right.
can be perfectly predicted and controlled from the top down
Okay.
using theories and models.
So he's saying that book smarts and fancy degrees don't always translate into real-world competence.
Not always.
That sometimes the best way to learn is by doing,
By doing.
by getting your hands dirty and figuring things out through trial and error.
Precisely.
Okay.
He argues that true knowledge, the kind that leads to resilience and adaptability,
Right.
is often gained through experience, through trial and error, through learning from mistakes,
Yeah.
and adapting your approach based on what actually works, not just what looks good on paper.
It's like the difference between reading a cookbook and actually cooking a meal.
Exactly.
You might have all the theoretical knowledge in the world, but until you get in the kitchen and start experimenting,
Yeah.
you won't truly understand the nuances and complexities
Right.
of creating something real, something tangible.
Exactly. And this is where Taleb sees the value in professions
Okay.
that involve tinkering, craftsmanship, and hands-on problem solving.
Okay.
Professions where feedback is immediate and consequences are real.
So we're talking about people like artisans, engineers,
Yes.
and even those New Jersey, Brooklyn, Italian foreign exchange traders
Exactly.
he describes in his book.
They might not have Ivy League degrees,
Right.
but they have a deep understanding of their craft
Yeah.
that comes from years of experience and a willingness to adapt and learn as they go.
Okay.
They have skin in the game
Right.
because their livelihoods depend on their ability to read situations,
Uh-huh.
make judgments, and adjust their approach based on real-world feedback.
Okay.
And these doers, by constantly experimenting and adapting,
Yeah.
create more options for themselves.
Oh.
More skills, more connections, more understanding of how the world really works.
Right.
They become less reliant on any single plan or prediction
Uh-huh.
because they've developed this flexible, adaptable approach to navigating complexity.
So it's about embracing uncertainty, being open to new possibilities,
Yes.
and developing a flexible approach that allows you to pivot and adjust as needed.
Exactly.
It's about becoming comfortable with not knowing everything
Right.
and being willing to learn and adapt along the way.
Precisely.
I like that.
It's about recognizing that the world is a complex and constantly changing place.
Yeah.
And the best way to navigate it
Mhm.
is to be adaptable, resilient, and always willing to learn.
Okay, so we've covered a lot of ground in this deep dive into anti-fragility,
We have.
from Taleb's triad and that power of optionality to
Yeah.
the wisdom of subtracting through via negativa
Uh-huh.
and cultivating that non-sucker mindset. But before we wrap things up,
Yep.
I'm still grappling with this question you left us with at the end of part 2.
Okay.
Like, what truly makes something anti-fragile?
Right.
It's not just about bouncing back. It's about actually benefiting from disorder, right?
It is a bit of a mind bender.
It is,
We're so
yeah.
conditioned to think of like stress and volatility as negative things,
Yeah.
things to be avoided at all costs.
Yeah.
But Taleb really challenges that assumption.
Okay.
He argues that true anti-fragility goes beyond just resilience.
Okay.
It's about actually gaining from those chaotic, unpredictable events.
So it's almost like building up our disorder muscles.
Yes.
The more we expose ourselves to like manageable levels of chaos and uncertainty,
Right.
the better equipped we become to not just survive, but actually thrive in those environments.
Precisely. And this connects to another key concept that Taleb introduces,
Okay.
the idea of convexity.
Convexity.
It might sound a bit technical,
All right.
but it's a really powerful way to visualize how systems respond to like change and stress. Imagine a graph.
Okay.
On one axis, you have the intensity of some event or stressor, and on the other axis, you have the system's response.
Okay, I'm visualizing the graph, but walk me through this convexity thing.
All right.
What does it actually mean in a practical sense?
Okay, so a fragile system will have like a concave response on that graph.
Okay.
As the intensity of the event increases, the negative impact accelerates.
So like those stones we talked about earlier.
Yes, exactly.
The bigger the stone, the more damage it does.
Exactly, and not in a linear way.
Right.
But an anti-fragile system has a convex response.
Okay.
As the intensity of the event increases,
Yeah.
the benefits, the positive impacts also accelerate.
So it's like gaining more than you lose from those fluctuations and stresses.
Precisely.
Okay, so concave bad stuff gets worse faster.
Yeah.
Convex good stuff gets better faster.
Exactly.
But give me a real-world example to really drive this point home.
Okay.
Like, what's a system with a convex response, something that actually benefits from a little more volatility?
Think about the restaurant industry.
Okay.
So in a stable, predictable environment, a mediocre restaurant might be able to coast along for years,
Right.
serving up just okay food
Yeah.
to a loyal but limited clientele.
Okay.
But then things get shaken up.
Okay.
Maybe there's an economic downturn or a sudden shift in consumer preferences.
Right.
People become more adventurous, more willing to try new things, and suddenly that mediocre restaurant struggles.
Yeah.
While the ones that are truly exceptional,
Okay.
the ones that are constantly innovating and pushing boundaries,
Right.
they have an opportunity to attract new customers and thrive.
So the mediocre restaurants are fragile.
Fragile.
They break under pressure,
Yes.
but the exceptional ones are anti-fragile.
Antifragile.
They actually gain market share and grow stronger when things get chaotic.
Exactly. They have a convex response to that volatility in the market.
Okay.
The more chaos and uncertainty,
Yeah.
the more they stand to benefit, at least up to a certain point, of course. There's always a limit.
Right. Right.
But you get the idea.
I do. So convexity is all about having more upside than downside.
Yes.
When things get a little messy, when the unexpected happens.
Precisely.
So the challenge for us
Yes.
is to identify those areas in our life where we can create this convexity,
Right.
where we can position ourselves to benefit from the unexpected,
Yes.
to turn those unpredictable events to our advantage.
Exactly.
All right, challenge accepted, but how do we actually do that?
Right.
How do we make ourselves more convex in a world that feels increasingly uncertain and unpredictable?
One way, as we discussed earlier, is through embracing optionality.
Okay.
So by creating more options for yourself,
Yeah.
more skills, more connections, more experiences, you're essentially creating a wider range of potential outcomes,
Okay.
some of which might be unexpectedly beneficial when that landscape shifts.
So it's like diversifying your portfolio,
Yes.
not just financially, but in all aspects of your life. Not putting all your eggs in one basket,
Right.
keeping your options open, and being ready to pivot when the opportunity arises.
Precisely. It's about not getting locked into one path
Right.
and creating a system that allows you to adapt and adjust as needed.
Okay.
It's about having the flexibility to change course,
Yeah.
to seize those unexpected opportunities that might arise from chaos and disruption.
And I'm guessing another way to create convexity is to actively seek out those areas
Yes.
where small failures can lead to big learning experiences.
Absolutely.
Not being afraid to experiment, to take calculated risks, and to extract valuable lessons from those setbacks.
Precisely think about fields like entrepreneurship,
Okay.
scientific research, or even artistic creation.
Right.
They all involve this process of trial and error, of pushing boundaries
Yeah.
and learning from both successes and failures.
So the more you experiment,
Yeah.
the more you learn.
Right.
And the more adaptable you become to change and uncertainty.
Exactly.
It's like that saying, fail fast, fail often. Yes.
But the key, of course, is to make sure those failures are small and contained,
Right.
so you can learn from them without risking everything.
Exactly. And this brings us back to one of Taleb's most powerful and practical strategies for cultivating anti-fragility.
Yeah.
The barbell strategy.
The barbell strategy.
It's all about finding that sweet spot between extreme risk aversion in some areas
Okay.
and calculated risk-taking in others.
Okay. Remind me how this barbell strategy works in practice.
Okay, so think of a barbell.
Okay.
You have weight on both ends, but nothing in the middle.
Right.
On one end of the barbell are your core non-negotiable values,
Uh-huh.
the things you absolutely must protect. Your physical health, your financial security, your reputation, your relationships with loved ones.
Right.
These are the areas where you practice extreme risk aversion.
Got it.
You don't gamble with them.
Right.
You build a solid foundation, a safety net,
Okay.
that allows you to take those calculated risks in other areas.
So one end of the barbell is all about stability.
Security protecting your downside.
Exactly.
But what about the other end? Where does the anti-fragility come in?
That's where the fun begins.
Okay.
The other end of the barbell is all about exploration, experimentation, pushing boundaries.
Right.
It's about pursuing those passions,
Yeah.
testing those unconventional ideas,
Right.
taking those calculated risks
Mm-hmm.
that might lead to breakthroughs, to outsized gains, to those aha moments that propel you forward.
So it's about balancing stability and security
Yes.
with exploration and growth.
Precisely.
Knowing that you have a solid foundation to fall back on.
Right.
If those experiments don't go as planned,
Exactly.
it's a powerful combination.
It is. The barbell strategy allows you to be both prudent and adventurous, to protect your downside while simultaneously maximizing your upside potential.
Okay.
It's a framework for navigating uncertainty, for turning volatility into an asset,
Right.
for becoming, in a sense, anti-fragile.
This has been an incredible deep dive.
It has.
I mean, we've explored so many powerful ideas, from the triad and the barbell to the power of via negativa and the importance of that non-sucker mindset. We even tackled convexity.
We did.
It's a lot to take in.
It is.
But I feel like I have a whole new set of tools for approaching the world,
Yeah.
for turning those unexpected challenges into opportunities for growth.
Excellent.
Any final words of wisdom for our listeners
Sure.
before we wrap up this exploration of anti-fragility?
The key takeaway here is this: in a world that's increasingly complex and unpredictable,
Right.
the ability to not just survive, but thrive in the face of disorder is a superpower.
It is.
And by understanding and embracing these principles of anti-fragility, you can transform uncertainty from a threat into an opportunity
Okay.
for growth, resilience, and even, dare I say it, a little bit of excitement.
I like that.
So go out there, embrace the unexpected, and become anti-fragile.
That's a wrap on this deep dive into anti-fragility.
It is.
We hope you've enjoyed this exploration.
We did.
Now go out there and start building those disorder muscles.
Yes.